Good morning. Welcome to Caffeinate Your Career. Today's topic, 7 difficult interview questions, and more importantly, how to answer them. I'm your host, the career coach with the most, Jason Hopper. With me today is the world-renowned recruiter, Scott Butnick. Scott, thanks for being here today. Welcome back.
Always a pleasure.
To Caffeinate Your Career. It's been a while since we've had you on the live stream.
Yeah, I was putting notches in the wall, but there were so many other better people. So
No. And so if y'all are wondering like where Allison is, Allison had a last-minute scheduling conflict and was not able to be here. And Scott was here. You were just here last Thursday.
Yeah.
Scott was here Thursday to do a presentation. He did a Q&A, Ask a Recruiter, and was awesome and was gracious enough to fill in for Allison today for today's topic. I am looking, and it seems that we are, in fact, live. And see some people popping into the chat. So great. If y'all have any questions, go ahead and answer them. I will be monitoring the chat. So, Scott, we talk a lot about interviewing and being prepared for the interview. But there are 7 questions that are a little bit more, not tricky, but more difficult for people to answer. But they don't have to be so long as you practice, right? But we're going to break those down, starting with the first one, which is, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
Recruiters use this as a signal to you so that you know that the interview is actually starting. This is your chance to give your 30-second commercial, or also sometimes called the elevator pitch. I always, when I was a recruiter, I asked it a little bit differently. I would hold up the resume and go, so I've got your resume, and I would just drop it and go, tell me in your own words your career story, right? Yeah. And have them talk to me. Scott, your thoughts?
So it's interesting. The other day when I was here, I think, well, maybe you don't remember because people don't remember a lot of what I said. But I said a lot of my thoughts are based on my own experiences. Mm-hmm. And I remember vaguely, not the specifics, but vaguely, the very first couple of interviews I went on after I got out of school. And people would say, tell me about yourself. And I would start out by telling them where I was born. That's what you literally, that's what this question doesn't mean.
Right.
Okay. It doesn't mean that. It's the 30-second elevator pitch. It's your opportunity to, I've always believed, regardless of the type of job that the person is interviewing for, passion carries the day. So it's your opportunity to start letting that, whether it's a recruiter or a hiring manager, know why you're excited to be here.
Yes.
Okay. What in 30, like you said, 30 seconds, what has pointed you in the direction of being here today? Like that. But it's not, well, I started out as a child. I came out of the wheat fields of Iowa. Like that.
We all started as a child. Right? That's a great point, though, because they're not looking for the personal information.
That's right.
I will say, my very first real interview, career, I'd had jobs before that. In fact, I started working when I was 16. Mm-hmm. But my first professional interview, and I was in staffing. Mm-hmm. So the very first staffing job I had, I worked for a boutique firm. There were 8 recruiters total. We mostly recruited HR. We would do some sales and marketing, but mostly we recruited HR. So when I went to go interview, I'm interviewing with the president of the company. And I go in, and Jack says, so tell me a little bit about yourself. And I start out with, I graduated school. I'm looking for my next opportunity. I'm pretty good. And he could tell I was I was nervous. And I couldn't get words out of my face. And so Jack said, stop.
Yeah, take a breath.
I was like, okay. And he goes, no, tell me about you. Did you grow up in the area? Do you have family here? And so I kind of relaxed because people like to talk about themselves. Yeah. And so from then, I was good to go after that. But sometimes the recruiters will do that, but most of the time it's business. In fact, go ahead.
See, I was going to say, he invited you to that conversation. He invited you in that direction.
Yes.
Now, if you don't follow his lead, you're not answering his question.
That's right.
One of the worst possible flaws you can commit in an interview is don't answer the person's question.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the people watching today and the people that will hear it say, they'll think to themselves, well, why wouldn't you? But it happens. It happens. You lose track. Okay. So focus is important. You don't want to drill a hole through the person's eyes with your vision, but you want to stay in the conversation.
Correct.
And that means answering their question. He invited you. When they invite you in that direction, and actually, right away, I'd say that's a positive because he wants a more, not intimate, let's not get corny, but a personal relationship. More than, okay, what makes you good as a such and such?
Well, it's that connection.
Exactly.
That's what you're looking for.
Exactly.
You want to try to connect with the interviewer. Yeah. And you brought up a part of it just a second ago, but there's actually a formula for answering this question.
Mm-hmm.
It is your past experience, what you learned from it, and then the last piece, why you're excited about this opportunity.
Right.
So, guys, once again, your past experience, what you learned from it, and then why you're excited about this new opportunity.
Yeah, kind of a broad-based star answer.
Correct. Yeah.
Broad-based, until they start to ask you specific questions like that, behavioral questions. So you answer these initial couple in the same format, but more broadly based.
So. Just, guys, if you don't know, STAR is an acronym. It stands for Situation, Task, Action, and Result. It is a good way for you to tell your story when the interviewer asks things like, tell me about a time when. It's all those tell me about a time when. Tell me about it. And when I think one of the most difficult, and we talk about difficult questions, this isn't one of them that we had for topic today, but one of the most difficult ones, I think, for behavioral-based interview questions, Scott, is tell me about a time you failed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
Because everybody's looking for all the positive, and I guess the follow-up is, and what did you learn from it?
That's right. Well, and what you have to be aware of is that ultimately is what the the interviewer wants to know. That's really important. Mm-hmm. Is what did you? So even if they don't say, because look, we all fail. We all have. Don't get me started about the moments for which I can demonstrate regret in my career. All right, don't. But having said that, when you're approached with this question, be honest about it.
Yeah.
Answer the person's question. And he said, but am I digging myself a hole? And you could, if you're not smart about it. And the way to be smart about it is to do exactly what you said, which is finish with what you learned from it. And don't just say, I won't repeat that mistake. Say why you won't repeat that mistake.
Well, that's a good,
make the interviewer understand and believe genuinely that you learned, and this is what you learned, and this is what you're going to do next time to avoid that situation.
Yeah,
that's important.
That's a good tip. Is that last bit? Make sure that they know. Yeah.
And it works. That works in a retail scenario. That works in an accounting, an operational scenario, IT. I didn't communicate the parameters of the project the right way, and it went off the rails. So, they may ask you what you do, even if they don't ask you, so what did you do about it, or what are you going to do next time? You need to volunteer that.
Yeah.
Because it shows you're proactive. It not only that you address that issue, but that you're a proactive thinker.
That's a good point, because the other part of that is employers hire people to solve problems.
Exactly.
And then you have to convey why it is that you're able to solve the problem. And even if it is, this failed, here's what we learned from it, you're still ahead of the game.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2 on the list of difficult questions is, what is your greatest weakness? Or another way to phrase that would be, what skill needs improving? Recruiters, and I would ask, what's your greatest weakness? It's like they ask that to see, one, if you're self-aware. Two, are you interested in improving anything about you? And what are you doing? What are you doing? What steps are you taking to get better?
And to kind of foot with that, if you will, I really believe this, Jason. I think a lot of people today, a lot of companies are looking for some degree of humility in people. And when you're able to talk about your weaknesses, when you're able to be just a little bit vulnerable, now you don't want to paint yourself into a deep, deep corner. Yeah. Again, if you're asked a question like this, answer the question. And that's why you have to prepare. By the way, real quick, and without, at the risk of getting off onto a tangent, when I think about preparing, I don't advocate that people look in the mirror and answer questions, because I think that makes people stiff, makes them too nervous. Being a little nervous going into an interview is a good thing if you can manifest it as excitement.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
If you're so nervous that, and I had I remember this many years ago, but a candidate was so nervous they literally froze in front of me. They did. She did. And it was, so I gave her a sec. We postponed it. We rescheduled. And I won't go into the whole story because we don't have time. But being a little nervous is usually a good thing. But practicing, when you use the term practice, I've read it on the online journals. Oh, look, I guess you could, video yourself answering some questions. Mm-hmm. Have somebody else look for it. I don't think you're your own best coach. But when you talk about preparing, just think about what you're going to say, okay? And you can't know exactly what they're going to ask. That would make it too easy. Right. But having said that, at least have those stories ready, and that's how when if somebody says to me, well, what does preparation mean? I mean, just think about what you think you're going to talk about, right? And then be prepared for anything else. Know something about the company. We talked about that last week, right? Okay. That starts to fill in some other boxes, knowing something about the company, because that can help you on several different levels of the conversation. If you are able, so the symptoms for nervousness and excitement are the same, mm-hmm. Right? Oh. Your heart beats a little bit faster, your palms get a little, sweaty, you start to get sweaty, right? Yeah. So if you can, make that switch in your head, manifest it. I'm so nervous, but I'm so excited. Yeah. It does make the difference. Yeah, and right? if you're that nervous, I would say, remember my again from the other day, one bite at the apple. If mm-hmm. you're that nervous, don't take the interview. Don't take the interview, because if you're so nervous that you're outwardly affected, and you can tell yourself you're outwardly affected, having a few butterflies in your stomach, that's a good thing. Okay, I think so. I think it lends to the humanness and the realness of the person. Like you said a minute ago, for preparation, I think it's important to, one, understand how you best learn, mm-hmm. because that's going to determine how best to prepare. If you are, so I'm an auditory and repetitive learner. So before you're here and before the live stream starts, I'm in here out loud, kind of quietly because I'm loud. I'd be like, so what's your greatest weakness? Recruiters asked it, and I'm just repeating it so that it comes out a lot better. You said a second ago, you don't know every question you're going to ask. No, you don't. But what you can do is, we have a whole list of 7 questions here. Mm-hmm. You could go Google typical interview questions, and you have a list, and just be prepared to answer any of those questions. Right. Think about it. That's preparation. Yeah. When we're talking about this question, what's your greatest weakness? It's always important to pick something that you are looking to improve, make it the true answer, the real answer. Right. But also, too, make it a nice to have and not something that's a requirement for the position. Yeah, and I think to this specific question, what is your greatest weakness? This is an area that I've thought about a lot because I've encountered candidates that don't do this, which is make sure you end it on a positive. Okay. This, here's where I encountered this, because the person might ask you that. So what do you think? I remember this was some of the places I worked would say it this way. Well, what do you think are your opportunities? Took me a while to figure out opportunities are the same as weaknesses. In a coaching conversation, well, Scott, this is an opportunity for you. Oh, okay, now I begin to figure, you're telling me this is what I need to do. Okay, fine. So weakness, so this is something I've had to deal with. So this is what I've done about it. Okay, and this is how it worked. And don't finish it with something that didn't work when you tried to address it. And it's okay, by the way, to that, again, with respect to weaknesses, to leaving the door a little bit open, because it shows you're all about, and I know this is important in today's workforce, continuous improvement.
Yes.
I got a little better, and I need to get even better. Okay. And I think I'm coachable that way, and people want to work with coachable. People want to have coachable people working for them. That's just like the passion thing.
Yeah.
They want to be able to. They want to know that if I sit down and have a conversation with you, if they're an effective professional leader, right, that they're not going to rip you open over the issue, that they're just going to help you be better.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
And there's a big difference. We know that. That's modern management.
That's more of a you look for the culture fit.
Right.
Exactly. You want to work for a leader, not a boss.
Exactly.
Right. Also, real quick, if you need help in coaching in your job search, you can give us a call at 972-437-9950, extension 379. Leave a message, and somebody from the team will get back to you in 24 hours. It's the commercial for the day. By the way, a couple shout outs. Jim Ballard said, "Go Stars," and good morning, Gina Patton. It's nice to see you in the chat. Y'all get active in the chat. Get connected to each other. You never know who somebody's going to know. All right, question number 3 on difficult questions. Why do you want this job? Interviewers ask this to determine if you're going to be a fit with the culture, but also, did you do your research? Do you know what the company's about? What is their mission statement? What is it that they actually do here?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's knowing what they actually do. Let's put it this way. Don't get into the interview and say, no, I don't know what the company does. Okay.
Right.
You don't have to know, you don't have to know some proprietary secret about the company. They don't expect you to know that.
Right.
But because if nothing else, it shows you took that 15 minutes to go out to the internet, and that information is out there. Okay?
Yeah. So, and they can ask it different ways. What did you think of our website?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when I was coming to interview here, I was employed at the time. I was working for the state of Texas. But my job at that point was to get this job. I made my job and so I had take notes in my phone. I have notes for everything in this phone. I typed out in my phone this many notes about Jewish Family Service. I did a deep dive. Deep dive. I went like the name of our building is the Edna Zale building. I'm like, oh my God, who's Edna Zale? Let me go. Like that's gonna come up in the interview, right? But I was so all I did, and so again, I'm working, but when I at lunch, free time, all I did was like look at my notes and practice saying them, so that when the time came and Allison asked me, "What do you know about the company?" I was gonna nail it.
Yeah, hit a home run. Yeah.
So what happened was we were in the interview and Allison said, "Let me tell you about JFS." I'm like, "Oh, you just blew my whole all week. I've been working."
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with agreeing somebody and indicating knowledge of something, okay? Because that builds this between you and the interviewer. So even if the interviewer volunteers, hey, let me tell you a little bit about it. Maybe a quick, yeah, I saw that on the website. Oh, so you did do some research, There's different ways. You don't have to be, if you'll pardon the phrase, you don't have to be an Einstein about the organization. Yes. But you have to indicate you've done something to live some understanding of what the mission is.
So you want to stay away from answering things like, I want more money, I want better benefits, I want to upskill.
It's never about you.
No, it's not. It's not about,
never about you.
It's about how, well, it is, because it's what it's about you is how can you solve the problem for the employer.
Right.
It's really about that
Right.
more than anything else.
Okay.
But make sure that when they ask that question that you're answering it with enthusiasm, why it is that you want to work there. Right. Number 4 on difficult interview questions. Why are you looking for a new opportunity? Interviewers are going to ask this to determine what your motivation is, but also like what happened and why you're back on the market.
Exactly.
Scott, thoughts?
So, pardon me for approaching this way. I tend to, but I'm going to approach this from a negative. Here's what you don't say.
Yes.
What you don't say is, because I couldn't get along with my manager.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You never want to imply it's anything personal. Okay. Is it cultural? That's okay.
Yeah.
Be careful. Be careful. And don't never be critical of the company. To say that, you know, I just felt like the company was moving culturally in another direction from me. That's okay. I didn't fit well in the company because of this or that. That's not okay.
Right.
And you know, we chuckle at them, but we know we've heard that.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
Right. Or
I've had, excuse me for that, I have had people say to me, well, I've had trouble getting along with my manager.
Or, well, me and this other person had an argument and it got escalated and the boss liked them better than me. And then I was terminated. They had no cause to terminate me. I'm like, no, they did.
You know, and also when we talk, again, come back to preparation. The other thing you have to be prepared for, because a good interviewer will do this, is you have to be prepared to provide specifics.
Okay? Oh, yes.
And there's a way to provide specifics and still keep it professional and not make it personal or like you have an axe to grind. That way, as opposed to digging yourself a hole in the interview from which you can't extricate yourself. And that happens too.
So, Scott, if you were terminated and they asked the question, why are you looking for a new opportunity? How would you phrase that?
Well, so if I were terminated, again, I probably wouldn't say, I wasn't performing or I wasn't meeting expectations. Okay. I would probably say something like, the company, the business conditions changed. Okay. In not only in the macro, but in more specific ways. Business, what changed? Well, the company changed who it's. I'm going to see this. It's a fair question you ask, but I'm going to answer it through the eyes of going for a recruiting job.
Okay.
And I would say something like, the company made it clear that it was changing who the targets were to they felt to grow the business, and it just the challenge of finding those kinds of people that fit that profile just became it was too much. The challenge became insurmountable. Well, how so? And you can go on and in ways that I'm not prepared to today, just because I didn't prepare that much for it. But you never want to make it seem like you couldn't get along with anybody.
Yeah.
That it was some personal gripe. And I always use. I said your example is as valid as mine. I said, well, I couldn't get along with my manager, but I couldn't get along with my teammates is just as radioactive an issue.
Right.
Okay, because it's not kumbaya, but everybody wants to work with people that they at least want to be around, especially as people come back into the office.
That's a great point. Like, you don't have to be friends.
Right.
Or even get along with people on your team. You just have to be respectful.
Exactly.
And be able to work with them.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right. And there will often and always be professional differences. Just don't make them personal differences.
Pete Hernandez popped in the chat, says know about the company and the industry. Very good point, Pete. Thank you for that. I like, depending on the situation, but if in termination, you terminate, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just in the phrasing. It's like, well, there was a reorganization in the department, and because of that, I no longer have a job.
Yeah.
That's true. You reorganized yourself out of that job because
That's
you
right.
screwed something up,
That's right.
right? And if there is a situation where you were just laid off, that's all you need to say.
Yeah.
You don't need to give me the story.
No.
Like,
You shouldn't.
well, business get a downturn and they laid me. No, just say I was laid off, and then stop talking.
Answer the question. Don't dwell on it.
That's right.
Yeah. Economic fact. Maybe I mentioned something like economic factors, macro factors. The economy changed, and the company decided to make a strategic move. Okay.
That's good. That's yeah. A lot of it's just how you phrase it.
Yeah. And you could, I got laid off from a company, and as I explained it, I said the company made a strategic change. I liked working there up until the day they laid me off. Make it at least feel positive.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've heard this too. Well, they laid me off, and I never really liked working there, so it was a good thing they laid me off. I've heard that. Okay.
I've heard too. Have you heard? Well, it was a mutual decision.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you decided to just not work anymore. Like that's not that's not a thing.
No.
Right. Also, too, like make sure be real careful. You if you want to be like, well, there wasn't any growth, and so I decided to. Well, why did your current employer decide to challenge you more?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That could come back.
Or did you ask for a better?
Did you? I even asked that. Right. That's another thing. Did
You did that comes back to preparation. You just need to. Somebody once called this critical thinking to me. If I say A, you might say B. If you say B, I need to be prepared to say C. And if I say C, you might say D. And I learned about that not in an interview, but I learned about it in terms of within an organization. It's important when you think about how to grow your career, you have to think about, and people define critical thinking in different ways, but that's the way it was defined to me. Again, if I say A, you might say B. And if you say B, I might say, I'm going to have to say C. And when I say C, you might say D. And it goes back and forth that way. And interviews are very much like that.
Right. Well, it should be like that back and forth, like tennis.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Back.
And it doesn't have to be. I'm not saying it better not be. If it's confrontational, you probably shouldn't spend much more time with the person.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't have to be confrontational. It can just be a conversation about factors that were, a lot of times beyond your control.
That's the other thing that I think people forget is that the interview is just a conversation. It's just a conversation. And now there's a topic. We're going to talk about this specific job. Yeah. But on most conversations, there's going to be some kind of a topic.
I just think I've lived by this, and I've lived by it as a candidate myself, and I very much live by it as a recruiter. The best interviews are conversations.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
And you can feel it. You can feel it as it starts to happen. You can. I can.
Number 5 on difficult interview questions. Why should we hire you? Interviews are going to ask this to see what sets you apart from everybody else we're talking to.
Yeah. I think what you said, Jason, earlier addresses this right on target, which is because I solve problems.
Yeah.
I really believe it.
Yeah.
I solve problems. And, a lot of companies today, boy, it's not a buzzword. It's not one of these 5 buzzwords you should stay away from. Everybody needs to, let me rephrase that. It's going to really help you if you can demonstrate innovation. It doesn't have to be you reconfigured the nuclear atom.
Yeah.
Just a small process, a suggestion you made to your boss, something to indicate you thought outside the box. And try to make it one that worked. That helps.
Right.
Okay. Oh, I innovated. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering about driverless cars, whether that innovation is ever going to really pay off. But maybe it will. Okay. Let's just say maybe it will. But if you innovate something that didn't work, I probably wouldn't spend a lot of time talking about that. Unless they asked you specific, and they could. Tell me about a time you came up with an idea that fell flat on its face.
Yeah.
Answer the question. Answer the question, answer the question. But, a lot of people today, a lot of companies, a lot of managers are looking for some level of innovation. And I'm always careful because when you say innovation, people think, so what, they're going to want me to design the next piece of software or something. No. Just the way maybe you tweaked the process. Maybe you looked at something and said to your manager, hey, Jason, I see we've been doing this way. What if we did it that way? Here's what I think might come about. Oh, at least he knew you were thinking outside the box.
There's that creativity.
Innovation.
I've learned in my time here to not have ideas, because when I do have ideas, Allison usually says, "Oh, that's a great idea. Go do that."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But no, I was just floating the idea around. I thought like maybe it'd be cool if we had a live stream and like.
But you could also interpret it as license to seek out other people's feedback, because that, whether it's Allison or anybody's manager out there, says, hey, there might be merit to that. So now the door's open to get some more feedback on it.
Yeah.
And maybe get buy-in, and then you get partners, and now you're rolling.
Well, that's exactly how our practice interview program happened. Is we were talking about it, and I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Go do that. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I've never done that before.
Yeah.
So I sat down with Phil. Phil's like, okay, so here's what we learned for project management. We start at the end. We start at the and then what's the timetable for building stuff in? Yeah. Once I figured that out, and I had our volunteer manager, Michelle, this is what I need from you by this date. She's supposed to find people. We got you involved, Jim.
Yeah.
Jim Warner's like, hey, let's get Scott in here. I'm like, that's a great idea.
Most of the time, the good ideas take on, and it sounds corny, but they take on a life of their own. They get momentum.
Right.
Okay. And people, wow, you really got me thinking about something. Then when you hear that, you're rolling. Okay?
Well, even the live stream, right? Because it started out, we had 3 different topics, and it was me and Allison and Phil. And it's like the idea was we were just gonna just hang out and talk about different topics. Since then, it's grown, and we've narrowed it down to like one specific topic per episode. And we have you a guest sometimes, but otherwise it's just me and Allison just hanging out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, number 6 is always
one of the real quick. The other thing, why should we hire you? I don't think this can be overstated. Again, it's something I mentioned earlier: passion. You've got to demonstrate passion or excitement when if you even sense. Generally speaking, they're not going to say, so now we're 20 minutes into our interview, and I look at you and say, so why should we hire you? They're going to be looking for reasons that you've articulated why they should hire you.
Well, that's a good point, Scott, because it's important to remember the recruiters are wanting to move you forward.
Yeah.
They're not.
The good ones are.
They're not trying to trip you up or get rid of you.
That's right.
They have your resume. They know you have the skill to do it. You're in the seat to see if you are going to be a fit for the team and the culture. The recruiter is at that point, because the recruiter doesn't know the day to day. He or she has the job description, but they don't know the mechanics of the job. What they know is people.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And that will determine, and that's the other thing, the why, like why you want to work there, is personal to every single person. That's why that bit is so important to nail when you're talking about that problem, because nobody else has that reason.
Right.
Just you.
Just you.
Number 6 for the 7 difficult interview questions is, what are your salary expectations? This is a hard one, only because people just don't want to talk about money.
Yeah.
It's just something that is a difficult topic to bring up. But it's important because, you need to get paid.
Yeah. If I'll ask a candidate, I'll ask a candidate, let's talk about salary expectations, or what are your salary expectations? And if they start to hem and haw, I'll say to them, I'll try to do a reset and say, look, you need to tell me, because if money's not important, then we should both give our salaries to the United Way every 2 weeks, okay? And just get them to loosen up a little bit,
Yeah.
right? And kind of, it's not an icebreaker because we're too deep. We're talking about salary. We're deep into the conversation. We're deep into the interview. Pardon me, but just take a little bit of the edge off because it is difficult for people to talk about. People, I've recruited, so I can see it from the other side of the equation. People they don't want to underprice and they don't want to overprice. And they get so hung up on those concepts that they start to hem and haw with this question, and you really shouldn't.
No, I think it's important to do your research a little bit ahead of time.
Right.
It's also important that you know what your salary range is.
Yeah.
Every job posting whether they post it online or not, it has a salary range attached to it. You need to know, are you going to fit within that range?
Yeah.
And this is something that changed when we had the pandemic, was oftentimes the recruiters would start talking to candidates about experience, what they did, and then kind of at the end, they would, ask the salary question. Mm-hmm. When the pandemic hit and everybody and their mama was looking for work, that was the second question out of their mouth after how you doing?
You're right.
What's because we have way too many people looking for work. Recruiters don't have time to mess around. And so if you are out of range on the salary, okay, that's fine. Yeah. Let me know right now so that we can move on to the next thing. It's something that you need to know how to answer. Because, and I typically will say, I am currently interviewing for positions that pay a salary range of, and then give your range.
Yeah. And if it's, if it's too high for the company, then you probably didn't want to be there anyway. And I know that people can look at me. I can sense people looking at me through the live stream saying, that's easy for you to say. You're not looking for a job. But you need to be mindful, careful, at least mindful of where you're going to be working. And if they don't value you and you've done a little bit of research.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you're a career changer, and I don't discourage anybody from changing careers, but you have to look at things a little bit differently that way. Okay. And if career changer, or you're at the early stage of your career and you're looking to grow your career, you're probably not going to command what somebody who's been doing that job 20 years and doing it well for 20 years is going to command. But you do have to answer it. I think you should be upfront about it. I like the way you go about it. I'm looking for positions, for roles in this range. Something somebody mentioned to me years ago is, I was hoping to be at X, because people always like to fulfill your hope. They like to help you fulfill your hopes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so it's a word game a little bit.
It's in the phrasing.
Yeah.
Because what I said, and you changed it a little bit, but what the phrasing is I am currently interviewing.
Yeah.
Because what you're telling them is, I'm actively seeking a job and I am on the market now.
Yeah.
And it's important to know your worth.
Sure. Plus, it conveys a sense of urgency.
That's right.
Yeah.
That too. All right. So number 7, the last question of the 7 difficult questions to ask is this one. Do you have any questions for me? That should not trip you up, guys. Every interviewer is going to ask that question, and you need to have some questions prepared. You cannot go, well, no, you answered everything. No, they didn't.
Just ask something.
I tell clients, keep that one question in your back pocket, just because as you're talking and it's a conversation and we're going back and forth and you're asking questions and they're answering questions, make sure you hold one thing back that you can bring up. I've been real big lately, Scott, on talking to candidates or clients about culture questions. Mm-hmm. And the reason is, not a lot of candidates are asking culture questions, or at least not enough of them are. And if you're asking questions like, and this will only work if you're on site. Mm-hmm. So what is the team I'm joining, what do they usually do for lunch?
It's a good one.
It's kind of an odd question, but it's an important question.
Yeah.
The reason it's important is if they go, Oh, well, sometimes we go out, but most of the time we just eat together in the cafeteria. That shows that they foster a team environment.
That's right.
If they ask, oh, you know what, we are busy as hell, so we just eat at our desks and power through.
Yeah.
Okay, so typically you don't get paid for lunch, so you're wanting me to work for free.
Yeah, that tells you some things.
And that could indicate also a burnout culture. Or questions like, hey, I saw on the news the other day that you guys volunteered at Jewish Family Service Food Pantry. I think that's awesome. How often do you give back to the community?
Terrific.
Right?
Yeah,
like
terrific.
these kinds of questions are important for you to know, but also to, again, nobody's asking those types of questions.
No, you're right. I also think it helps, and this may seem a little abstract, but I think it helps to when they train. So the people I know that have gone through law school, one of the things I think law school students is one of the things they learn is ask a question in court to which you already know the answer.
Right.
I think it helps if you at least think you know the answer. Well, then why would I want to ask the question? Because at the end of the day, it's just important that you ask something.
That's
I
exactly
think
correct.
we agree on that.
Yes.
We've agreed on everything this morning.
So,
Just ask them. Don't ask about benefits. Don't ask about vacation. Don't bring up compensation. Okay.
Yeah.
These are so tell me a little bit about the culture here. Probably because you read something. A lot of companies do make some type of culture statement somewhere on their website. Okay. But it's a little bit innocuous, but at least it shows you've been thinking about what the opportunity is going to look like.
I think too, it's a good idea to not, you do your research,
Yeah.
but also look up the interviewer.
No, on LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah, on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
No,
we haven't mentioned that, but that's critical.
But
Because it gives you a point that you can focus on in a conversation.
well, it also too, like, it shows that one, you did your research, but you're also taking an interest in the people that worked there.
Absolutely.
But you also have to preface it with, hey, in full disclosure, of me doing my research for this interview, I looked you up on LinkedIn, and I see that you've been here for 20 years. That's amazing. What do you like best about working here? But you have to put that bit in. I did not. So I interviewed with Allison. Allison came staffing, right? So when I said, hey, so I see you've been here for 13 years. What do you like best about me?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't say, in preparation for this interview, I looked at.
Sure.
So then I go, and I came back 2 days later, and I interviewed with Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy Barker. Kathy knows I tell the story. I tell the story all the time. It's because it's funny. At the time, it wasn't so funny, but it's funny now. And I said, so I see that you've been here for 10 years. Like, what do you like, Mom? And she looked at me and was like, how do you know that? And I'm like, I looked you up on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And then she, at the end of the interview, Marlene came to get me. Marlene's our HR manager. And Marlene came to pick me up, and Kathy goes, apparently you looked me up on LinkedIn, and I think that's kind of creepy. And Kathy was a hard interview. I did not think I was doing well in the interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned around, I looked at Kathy, and I said, that's not being creepy, that's being prepared. And I walked out of the room.
Okay.
And because I'm like, I am not getting this job.
Well, and here you are.
And here I am. Everybody made a great decision. So, Scott, we're at time. Our last question is always kind of like a fun kind of question. What is your favorite board game?
Board game?
Yeah.
There's a couple. Can I give you a couple that come to mind?
Sure.
I'm going to date myself here. Now it's called $100,000 Pyramid. I think when it first came out, it was the $10,000 Pyramid.
Yeah.
That, always like to play that. And so word games, because the other one I'm thinking of, Scrabble.
Scrabble.
I'm an old-time Scrabble player. Yeah.
I've got two as well. One is Chinese checkers. We play Chinese checkers in the house. The other is chess. I was a pretty avid chess player when I was younger, and then didn't do it. But just last year, I started teaching our son, Tony, who's 12, how to play.
Okay.
And he's really getting into it. So.
Much too strategic for me.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. That's the funny thing is because you do have to think a few moves ahead.
Yeah.
But if you take your eye off the
Boy.
game and your strategy doesn't work, and my son, we started and I just beat him every single game because I'm not going to let him win. And one day I was trying to set him up, and I took my eye off the piece, and bam, he beat me.
No kidding.
Yeah.
See that?
He got good. He got good.
You reminded yourself.
I did. Guys, that's been Caffeinate Your Career for this week. Next week's topic is going to be, should I invest money in my job search? I'm going to have Sheree Harding Griffin, who is one of our financial coaches here, and that's going to be what we're talking about. So this has been Caffeinate Your Career for this week. Scott, thank you so much again
It's a pleasure. It's
for
always
being
a pleasure.
here, and we'll see you next week. Bye.